Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's your boy Johnny Bananas, and I'm going to be covering a brand new season of The Challenge USA on CBS that, of course, I will be completely dominating on my podcast, Death, Taxes, and Bananas on the Ringer Reality TV podcast. Head over that feed and follow us on Spotify so you never miss an episode.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago and the guy was like, you're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago. I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian software like Jira, Confluence, and Trello help power global collaboration for all teams so they can accomplish everything that's impossible alone. Because individually we're great, but together we're so much better. Learn how to unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.com. Atlassian. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk. Now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, he's been looking for Thrawn himself. It's Andy Greenwald!
This is a big pod for us.
Ahsoka! I like saying that.
I want to let it go down.
If I was in the Star Wars galaxy, that would be my thing. Maybe I'd be like a concierge or a bartender.
Yeah.
And then Ahsoka would walk in and I'd be like, Ahsoka!
And then the vibes would get real low.
Do you think Filoni would be like, that's the energy I need in my mise-en-scène?
Judging by the first two episodes of his series, no. He does not want energy.
We're going to talk about the first two
can talk
episodes
about
about Ahsoka. We're going to talk about the most recent two episodes of Reservation Dogs.
We're going to talk about the risks involved in private air travel in Russia.
So
that's really all Chris wants to talk about.
I wanted to talk about my guy Yevgeny so bad.
Yeah.
If I asked you today,
yes,
and if this is the Russian Wagner Group head, you know, the private military, paramilitary arm of whatever's going on over there, I can get into details, but I don't want to bore our audience. But he had, tried to have a coup against Putin. He tried to have like a military uprising against Putin.
It was coup adjacent.
Like there was nothing but love and unity in that field that day. And then he was basically exiled to Belarus, popped up in Africa, then for some reason was in a plane flying over Russia, and that plane got shot down. And his name is on the manifest, right?
Right.
I'm not boring people with this. I don't want to get into geopolitics.
Yes, you do. You so do.
What is FanDuel putting the odds at that he was actually on that plane?
Well, you set the line for me. Like, I didn't know this was an option. Because for me, I'm hung up on, maybe this is a sign of more of where we are just both geopolitically, but also in terms of the dimensional chess that we individually play.
Yeah.
You're already on 6D.
Yes.
You're like, he's alive.
Yeah.
Here's where.
Yeah. I didn't say that. I just said that I'm aware of those ideas.
I'm still just lovingly curating my Google Doc of things I would not do ever again if I had staged a failed coup in Russia.
Which is fly over Russia.
Which is anything involving the word Russia, which is also private air travel of any kind.
Yeah.
Air travel of any kind.
Honestly, the thoughts I have about a lot of this stuff should really go on the Watch After Dark.
Okay.
Like, I don't really feel like talking about it on like what is really going to be a show about, a cat in space.
It's like a frog cat. I just
want you to know that I expect you to treat me when I go down for whatever reason.
When your plane goes down?
The way that the headquarters of Wagner Group did their boy Yevgeny.
Tell me.
Where they lit the office windows up in a cross.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do that at Spotify HQ? Do you
at
want
your
me
house.
to do that
at your house?
Or not at Bad Brother in Philadelphia? Like all of your favorite places? I just like it. I don't have warlord mentality.
No, you do
because
not.
The thing about Yevgeny...
Except you do when you get on the warpath about a show.
Yeah, but, I'm an armchair warlord at best.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I'll say it here in the climate-controlled confines of Spotify USA.
Is it cool enough for you now?
Not yet. I just wanted to keep you... I want to keep you aware that you did not have the studio the way I like it. Kaya's still not here. It's all falling apart. Because the Yevgeny thing, from what I understand, is that he was a...
Prigozhin, by the way. That's his last name.
He was a businessman.
Yeah.
That's
what Putin called him. Today, Putin made a statement. He was like, he was a talented businessman.
But a failed warlord. But like, he did the thing that so many capitalist leaders of America want to do, which is he just fully became El Comandante, right? Like he was just like, I will step down from the board of these oil concerns and lead a mercenary war force. And put on like a war jacket and started making speeches.
A war jacket?
And parading around. I don't know what they're called. Flak jacket.
This is why you need to watch Lioness.
Chris, I'm just saying, not only do I not have warlord mentality, maybe the reason I don't is because I can think of 10 to 40 things that I could spend the rest of my life doing, even if I was in Belarus. There are a lot of books I haven't read yet. There's probably a seaside or a riverside I could stroll along. You know
what's sad is that I think we've probably passed the point in our lives where if given the time, we would do X.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like, I think that I'd like to think that I would read the works of Tolstoy or write the great American novel or,
I think the former is more likely than the latter, but yeah.
You think it's more likely that I would read Tolstoy than write the great American novel?
In the time we have left before you take your private plane? Yeah, I do. Is that wrong? I think we do have time to do those things. It doesn't have to be
great. It could just be an American novel. How about that? Do you think it's more likely that I would write a novel or read Tolstoy?
I think you could write the great Belarusian novel in exile. I just mean you could choose to do those things. You could read all the Tolstoy books and write a novel instead of being like, you know what? Moscow needs me. You could just focus on, because here's the thing. Maybe this is what separates us as people. For me, the action is not the juice.
Yeah, it's for me. The juice is like a watermelon fresca.
The wine is the juice.
Yeah.
That is delicious.
Yeah.
A little acidic, and I'm good.
Moscow's not the only place that needs us. Hollywood needs us.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk GOP debate. Okay, no, let's do this. Let's talk Hollywood.
I've obviously had my attention going elsewhere this week,
Clearly.
So tell me why, when I woke up the other day, I guess it was...
You couldn't feel your arm.
Tuesday?
Yeah.
I woke up and it just seemed like everyone that I know who I follow on social media in SAG and the WGA, which is quite a few people.
It's Tim Simons.
Were big mad.
It's just Tim.
About something that the studios had done.
Yeah.
Explain it to me like I'm a baby.
Oh, like
no, not like a real baby, but like...
I could do that. Remember how mad you got when you saw that Bluey was the number 2 most streamed show?
I didn't get mad. I was just like...
You let out you scoffed. Okay, so talks between the WGA and the AMPTP had resumed. The sign, I think I referred to this over one of the last 2 pods, like there was not a lot of leaking going on. There was not a lot of litigating in the press. There was not a lot of insight into what was going on, which to me was a positive sign. It all seemed rather sober, which meant to me that there was some progress being made.
Yeah.
From what I understand, the meeting the other day was heavyweights were in the room. That
Ted and Donna, Dave,
Zaslav, Iger, Langley, Sarandos were asked to be in the room with Carol Lombardini and the WGA negotiating committee. And this jibes with what I've been hearing behind the scenes was that Ted and Bob in particular had been tapping their watch, being like, let's go, let's get this done. And read into that what you will. That could be their play to be like, to become the wise sachems of Hollywood, or it could also be related to the fact that Disney seems to be in public relations and economic freefall, and Netflix, by all accounts, needs Stranger Things 5 the way Yevgeny needed to get back to Moscow. Hopefully with better results. And so they were in the room. And then what happened, apparently, again, this is all now through, this is all through secondhand or third hand. The attitude in the room from the bigwigs and the heavyweights was, okay, this is our proposal, and this has gone on long enough, and you need to take this proposal. And the guild said, well, we'll certainly consider it. And then they left the room. And then 20 minutes later, the AMPTP, through their new press arm, or they'd gotten new publicists for themselves, the previous ones were doing a bang-up job, released their proposal in full.
To the trades.
To the media, saying here's
what we offer.
This is unprecedented. This is et cetera. This was not received well.
Yeah, I got that impression.
Now, to take one step back, again, this is just my opinion and my experience with it, to look at the proposal, which broadly does address almost all of the issue points.
The concerns, yeah.
Doesn't say it addresses them to the liking of the Guild, but it does at least engage with them more fully than anything we had previously known about. The fact that all points were engaged on, and there was movement in some of them, to me, in a vacuum, that's good. That's good. That means the window of negotiation has moved in the Guild's favor. That suggested to me that a deal was possible. If they were moving, then there could be movement on all sides. That's good. Doing this publicly through the press is not good. In fact, it sucks. And it not only sucks, it may run afoul of, from what I understand to be pretty widely recognized labor laws, which is union disputes are protected. They're still protected in this country, Chris, for now.
For now.
And I'm sure all those gentlemen and lady last night were very...
It was at the top of Nikki Haley's mind.
I think so.
Yeah.
And one of the things that are guaranteed about union disputes is that management must negotiate with the designated negotiators. They do not negotiate in the press because negotiating in the press is often seen as an attempt to do an end around the negotiating committee and negotiate directly with the rank and file members of the union who, as with any large group, may have disparate interests or may be in different places financially or in terms of their own security or stability, how they feel about things. And as always, the goal is to split the union and to have some people see the raises or the increases in the areas that are of concern to them and say, let's take this. I got to get back to work. I think that that's a shitty strategy. I also think it is, once again, a fundamental misread of the cultural moment because people are pretty fired up and people still have their trusty X accounts or whatever to
let people know how they feel.
Very strongly.
Yes.
And to, police their own borders, let's say, in terms of keeping everyone in line. On the non-public facing chats and WhatsApp things that I'm on, this was really received poorly, I would say, by everyone. And it may have set things back. It may have. I don't fully know. I mean, you could get into the nitty-gritty of it. It's one of the reasons, and again, I think this is also shitty, why the AMPTP was very clear about, this revolutionary deal raises the floor a staff writer can make from however many tens of thousands to this many tens, if not 100,000s. Circling those numbers was also an attempt to reframe the debate, being like, look how much the lowest ranking writers get paid anyway.
Yeah.
How could they be quibbling over this in this economy? I don't know what the next steps are. I choose to be still optimistic because the fundamentals remain slightly optimistic because the fundamentals remain the same. If Ted and Bob need this deal, that means there will at some point be a deal.
Sure.
And we just don't yet know whether this very public faux pas will set things back by weeks, another month or two, or if it will somehow force the AMPTP's hand to try again and we have a deal by Labor Day. I don't know. And I also I'm not well versed enough to know. There were things in the deal that stood out in the proposal. Sorry to break it all down, but there are things that mattered to me, like it enshrined the idea of writers, lower level writers being paid to go to set during production, which is vital. It's vital. It would have been vital to my experience. It's vital to, I think, the management of all shows, but it's also vital to the future of the industry to train the showrunners of tomorrow. Then people came on and was just like, but look at the framing, look at the loopholes. It's if production doesn't overlap with prep and then you have to give up there's just all these loopholes that people perhaps in paranoia or perhaps because they're reality minded are already noticing that could be taken advantage of. There's a similar thing with AI too.
The robots.
Yes, they're coming. And they're not as cool as the droids in Ahsoka, who seem to just be fine all the time and even do little robot fist pumps when they do a good job in space. There's stuff that I think this stuff will be litigated by the courts, not a MBA between the studios and the writers. But there's stuff being they're dealing with it and they're saying that, a writer must be a human and blah, blah, blah. And if AI is used, it is only in collaboration with a human writer. But someone pointed out that under recent court precedent, if a human is involved, then it can be copyrighted. So everyone's like, this is an end around. They're going to have a writer develop something, hand it to a robot, and because a writer gets a story by credit, it's copyrightable. So
I just fucking love the idea of it being handed to a robot.
Handed directly. Just directly to a robot. Anyway, that was a very serious and long monologue.
I'm glad you were able to level us out. I feel like we had a lot of fun. Daffy comedy in the beginning at the expense of a Russian warlord, and now we're talking labor law.
Like, if you guys, and don't do this, but if anyone ever fed in like the fundamentals of this podcast into ChatGPT,
you can do that. You can be like, tell me about this in the voice of like the Watch podcast with Andy and Chris.
But you know what it can't do? It can't start with Yevgeny. What's his last name? Prigozhin.
Yeah.
And then just like do a hard turn into the WGA NEGCOM and like the fundamentals of sending writers to set.
This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. New Year's resolutions are fun the first couple of weeks. Then you kind of maybe conveniently forget about them halfway through January. No shame. It happens to us all. But this year I have a foolproof plan, at least when it comes to saving money. Just switch to Mint Mobile and you're done. Goal accomplished, because for a limited time, their wireless plans are $15 a month when you buy a 3-month plan. The great thing about Mint Mobile is there's no jaw-dropping monthly bills or unexpected overages, and all plans come with unlimited talk and text. Get this new customer offer today at mintmobile.com/watch. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
TaxAct knows you don't look forward to taxes. TaxAct doesn't even look forward to taxes, and TaxAct is a tax software company. It's basically TaxAct's whole thing. If TaxAct did things over, maybe TaxAct would end up teaching kindergarten or leading fly fishing tours. But that's a different story for a different ad. So why don't we just agree that taxes aren't fun, but you still have to do them? TaxAct's filing software can help you do that. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Andy, let's talk about the Star Wars universe.
We love to do it.
So the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka were released last night, Tuesday night, which I thought was nice. It's no longer like, I think there's been sometimes when Star Wars shows have gone up on Friday evenings or Fridays during
Wednesdays too.
They're kind of all over the place with what they do with the Marvel and Star Wars stuff. I want to approach this from a place of humility from my part. So I will say that I have no familiarity with Ahsoka other than her appearances in The Mandalorian. I've never finished an episode of Rebels. I think I've watched YouTube clips before. And I was just going into this kind of blind, like for all the anticipation that I sensed from, say, like Mal and Joe, and from quarters where there's just like, I can't believe it. This, like, these characters that I have like this pre-existing relationship to, we're going to get to see them. Rosario's perfect casting. Can't wait to see Mary Elizabeth Winstead, et cetera, et cetera. This is largely a Dave Filoni project. He is the person who ran Rebels for I don't know, like he made 200 episodes of Clone Wars and Rebels.
He's that guy.
So he also has worked heavily on The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, and has a movie in development with Lucasfilm for Star Wars.
He has the ear of Kathy Kennedy.
Yeah, so I think one thing that's really interesting is to think about his ascendance or consolidation of kind of storytelling power over the Star Wars universe, and ask the question of like, who does Star Wars belong to, right? And that's obviously been a very fraught question to ask over the years, because we had the whole Last Jedi fallout of a lot of people seeing that movie and being like, that was among the best Star Wars movies I've ever seen. And then the sort of toxic fan response afterwards, where it was like, this is desecrated, the idea of Luke Skywalker, and completely fucked it, and we need JJ to come back. And I think ever since then, there's been this sort of roiling conversation / screaming argument about like, what is Star Wars and who does it belong to? And you and I are a little bit outside looking in, because we're like, Tony Gilroy caught so many bodies on Andor. Like there's no, that it will be, if something is better than Andor, then we're talking about like, it should get the best drama show on television, or the best...
Yes, which Andor is nominated for.
Yeah, or it should get best picture if it's a movie. You know what I mean? Like, we're really in that zone with how passionate and deeply invested we are in what he did with Andor. That being said, I I'm open to the idea that like there's lots of different versions of this universe. It's becoming increasingly apparent that like the Filoni vision of this universe is the one that they're opting for.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of reasons for that we can get into. I'm trying to basically be like, I don't want to just be like, I don't like it. You know? I'm trying to say that there are parts of this that I thought were cool. There were also the cool things I had to read about 8,000 words on the internet about to explain to myself. And there's been some talk. I heard Midnight Boys talking a little bit about this yesterday, and they did a great episode about this. And House of R is going to do amazing stuff and have been doing amazing stuff on this. I will just say that like I did not know what the fuck they were talking about in the show. Like as it starts and they're talking about Ezra Bridger and Admiral Thrawn and what happened to them. And there's obviously like these pre-existing relationships between Hera and Ahsoka and Sabine and all this stuff. I was basically like, I don't know who any of these people are, and they don't seem to be slowing down 1 mile per hour to explain it. Now, that could change over the course of the next couple of episodes, but on a basic like comprehension level, I was like, I don't know what's happening here. Like I have read enough about it where I was like, oh, actually, like these two messiahs who are like lost in space, and there's going to be this race to see who can get to their person first. And there also is other galaxies in Star Wars, and that kind of opens up some new stuff. I could get into that.
What you just said was more interesting to me than the 2 hours of TV I just watched.
Right.
I didn't know that. That would be cool if this series had any interest in welcoming me in, which it doesn't. I do want to start with pretty standard caveats.
Sure. That's what I tried to just do.
No, I thought you spoke very well about it. And I think I'm in agreement with you. I think the single most important thing to say, and if this is all you need to hear from me on the show, you can fast forward. I'm very pro people taking pleasure from their entertainment. This means a lot to a lot of people, including dear friends of ours. You mentioned Mallory. And so the chance to see these characters who matter to people, like that's wonderful. And it makes people really happy. And I don't want to take anything away from the people who this is made for, because this is specifically made for someone or someone's, many people, presumably. The second thing is, people know I have to say this, but like Rosario Dawson is one of the greatest people I've ever known in my life. I think she's a good friend. She's a brilliant artist and collaborator. This means so much to her. If there wasn't a strike, I think we would have covered the show by just having her come on to talk about it. I know that she was fan cast as this role many years before she got the role.
Right.
But she has also wanted to be a Jedi her whole life. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. I feel like the NDAs have probably expired. But the very last day we were shooting on Briar Patch, which is now almost 4 years ago, we were talking in Video Village before the last scene. And we were talking about stuff how it went, what we might do in the future. And she told me a secret. And the secret was that she had gotten this part.
Right.
And she was happier than I've ever seen her. And I think this is so cool.
She was like, Yevgeny Prigozhin's going to get blown out.
Also, she is very wise. I also just think that she, I felt this way with the show, and I'm glad more people get to see that she is a star. She has a rare charisma, and she has for someone who is so bubbly and exuberant, she has such a wild stillness.
Yeah.
And can control the camera and control everything around her in a way that really works for when she is playing a character like a Jedi who, like all Jedi, to me, is essentially kind of boring.
Right.
She is not boring. So that alone makes it more interesting. And I want the show to be successful for her. The next thing, just as preface, this isn't even preface anymore. This is getting into it. Because of all of this, I wanted to approach the show differently. I did not want to fire it up as me, person who I think is broadly done with Star Wars, and bring the usual hobby horses out. So what I decided to do was watch it with my children, because I was like, this seems like that's who it's for. Now, not to diminish it. I don't mean that in a pejorative way. Bluey, I think, is the best thing on TV. I think that I wondered if I was misreading this content, and basically being like, this is all ages.
Sure. Yeah.
And maybe the sight of women with crazy things on their heads solving shit and wrecking shop might be inspiring in some way to my daughters. It might be a way in for them. Because I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast before, but if there was a time that I was potentially maybe was working on a Star Wars thing, and I told my daughters that, hoping to get a little something.
Some respect, yeah.
Maybe just for a second. They were so profoundly uninterested.
Right.
And my older daughter said, just witheringly, "Why would I care about a story about a magic boy?" And I was like, "You're wearing a Harry Potter shirt right now."
And you were also like, "So you do know about Star Wars."
Yeah, exactly. So you know everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I thought this would be a way in. And I watched the first episode with them, and they didn't understand a single thing that was going on.
And I think that is a really interesting data point, but based on the 8,000 words, shout out to Ben Lindbergh, who did a great job like explaining not only these 2 episodes, but wrote a wonderful piece on The Ringer about like this being a huge inflection point for what Star Wars is doing.
Mm-hmm.
If you read all of this, I don't know how a child would understand it.
That's what I'm saying. I just fundamentally reject the idea that you need to do an enormous amount of homework to engage with a mass market entertainment show.
Mm-hmm.
That's just anathema to me. I think that's just an awful precedent and an awful idea. And that everyone, again, like people like Ben are doing yeoman's work. I mean, that's very helpful. But it's also like, as an industry, like the variety is like, here are the 15 hours of television you have to watch this 1 hour of a new thing. No, that's just wrong. That's fundamentally wrong. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. But that's part of that is like you being tricked by the media to be like, this is how like there are tricks of like
putting someone's name on a passenger manifest if they're not really on the plane.
It's like almost an algorithmic way to like, I mean, when you're listening to music on Spotify, like the part of the benefit is to be like, oh, what else should I listen to if I like Ceremony or if I like Drug Church? It's like, they'll tell you that. Now,
if you like Drug Church, it recommends the Watch podcast.
Now, if you are just like, the way we grew up, it would just be like, you ask people. Like, I like The Fall. Like, what else should I listen to? But we've taken a lot of that on. And I think that kind of like, here's 10 things to do before you do this. It's like kind of,
But that can be helpful when it's optional, when it's expansive, There shouldn't be a barrier of entry for art. And there shouldn't be a barrier of entry for the most, I keep saying mass market. I mean that as a good thing. Like, this stuff's supposed to be for everybody. It's not just supposed to be for the people who have done their homework and are now being serviced as a reward with this series. And what's really striking to me is in this moment, sitting down with you, what you just said in one sentence makes the show universal to me. Oh, there's a good Messiah and a bad Messiah, and they're floating in space.
Right.
There's a race to get them. That's a cool premise. But this isn't that in any way, and it doesn't even try to be that. And so I think that it might be that might mean that for someone who's fully dialed in, like Mallory, like this is then the real raw uncut.
I also think that maybe we gotta like be honest about like I'm sure like lots of people would have said the same thing about Andor, and in different ways.
But I disagree.
Okay,
because I do think, and obviously, look, everybody knows which side of the Star Wars fence that we are on in terms of what we like. But I do have at least 1 or 2 people that I've spoken to who are not Star Wars people who loved Andor.
Sure.
I do think Andor can be seen and viewed by a larger swath of people who recognize the humanity.
I don't really care.
Or the
I mean, like, honestly, I mean, like, I'm not, I don't mean I don't really care what you did. I mean, I don't really care how many people watched it or liked it. It's like going to be my favorite thing that Star Wars has ever done. And that's fine. Ben had a really good line in his piece. I think this is from his sort of preview piece, but it might have been the recap. But Ben was just like, Ahsoka is more likely to send you scurrying into Wikipedia in search of Star Wars arcana, including literally a planet named Arcana. Andor is more likely to make you commit stirring monologues to memory. And I don't think that, like, look, I'm going to choose the latter, like 7 days out of 7. But I understand what Ben was kind of saying, where it's like, they're doing different things. I think that gets to the sort of heart of what my issue is with, like, if Tony Gilroy had written all of the dialogue for the exact same show that we just watched, the 2 episodes that we just watched, I probably would have liked it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a flat...
I probably would have been happy to go be like, who the fuck is Ezra?
Yes, well, there's a flatness here that is just really dispiriting. It takes a swashbuckling premise about, a intergalactic alien space knight and it just drapes everything with this absolutely somber, stentorian, anti-fun, anti-adventure gloom that is the hallmark for a lot of these sort of live-action sci-fi stories. It's absolutely confounding. And I haven't seen the cartoons, but every still image I've seen from them, these characters are like swashbuckling and they're angular and they're smiling. That's not present here.
Yeah.
It's almost as if when you get real people, you have to somehow sell it more, which is not true. And then you take the flatness of the volume, you take the flatness of the direction, and you also take away one of the core things of Andor, which fixed one of my biggest problems of the last few years of not just Star Wars storytelling, but of CGI storytelling, which is that Tony Gilroy was invested in every single location, even if they weren't really locations, as a place.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning when you went to the planet where they spent 3 episodes doing a heist, there were native cultures and traditions and grievances and history and songs and music, and you understood it. It mattered. This is whatever the opposite of stirring is return to the Star Wars storytelling of Rise of Skywalker, where a CGI artist was like, what if trees? Cool. The universe is now just a collection of save points in a video game, where on this planet, there's green trees and also a stone relic that points to somewhere else. And you just fly from A to B to C to D.
Yeah.
Travel doesn't
this
matter.
Is also now,
distance doesn't matter. Injuries don't matter. You can get stabbed with a lightsaber and be better the next episode. Nothing matters.
This is also the second or third Star Wars story in the last 10 years or 15 years that's just about a map.
Yes. Well, that's also a weird J.J. Abrams thing. Like, this actually felt J.J. to me in that it starts with a magical MacGuffin that's going to point to something else that we've never heard of.
That we then need a key for.
Yes. Always.
Yeah.
Always. Got to get a key to the map. That part is exhausting. But I look, I think it's probably more productive rather than to dwell in the specifics of it, because there are a lot of winning people here. If you have the honor of having Mary Elizabeth Winstead in your television show, you can choose to use her as you will. Would I personally choose to paint her green and have her look confused as a hologram?
See, I actually thought she was good. I did not think that the makeup job was awesome.
I just don't know why.
Yeah.
Why? I guess because she's green in the cartoon? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool reason. But like, so what? And then half the scene she's in, she's a hologram, which is something that you can do in space. But, again, it goes into that same kind of just the Star Wars language of like how things happen now. The technology, the cool thing about Star Wars in the movies was the roughness of the technology, right?
It's like when Leia's getting projected, it's not like they can talk back to her.
Now, it's always exactly what you need, but still weirdly low tech. Like, we can read the memory of a droid with essentially an Atari handheld machine from 1982.
Yeah. But they can't like upload that map to the cloud.
No, because that doesn't exist. Or how in the opening scenes of this show, it's suddenly Star Trek, where it's just a bunch of people in suits being like, I'll take the comms as long as we need it to be Star Trek.
Yeah.
There's no consistency. It's always whatever is needed under the rubric of droids. Except now with witches. That's what was missing. But look, what I mean is we could go, and I kind of want to get into the minutia of it, but I do think that the larger argument is still kind of more compelling to me. Because this is so, despite this being the culmination of Dave Filoni's work for many years with Clone Wars and Rebels, it's so 2023 to me, because the main vibe I get is that Filoni is like the hero of one of these multiversal movies that we've been complaining about for 2 years. His, I guess, messianic mission is to hammer out previous stories until they all agree.
Because this show is essentially, I think, building towards it in some ways is the Andor of the sequels. Like,
yes.
It's building up to the sequels, and will explain why the New Republic and the First Order are at odds. Which, I mean, because they don't like each other. But, like what transpired so that another empire could rise.
Yes. And so but the goal is to take his shows, to take with the Timothy B. Was it Snyder, the guy who wrote the Thrawn books.
Mm-hmm.
They were then sort of cast out of canon, to bring those back into the fold, to make everything agree. And that just kind of bothers me too. Like that's just kind of, that's not storytelling. That's just like OCD behavior to me. This idea that every story we make, every timeline, every reboot needs to agree, needs to talk to each other, needs to fix everything. speaks to me of like a very, very serious national anxiety as opposed to a desire to make interesting stories. Like we're not actually okay with any uncertainty or just leaving things unfinished or just moving on and trying something new. We have to square it. We have to make it work or else the future will fail or else the whatever the way Doctor Strange explains it is going to happen.
Right.
That's weird to me. The other thing that I just still, maybe this is Star Wars, but like within the trust tree here, you and me, right? And Kai,
sure, that's
Kai's
the only
producing.
people who are listening.
Jedi and Mandalorians are boring, Chris. Like they're boring.
Yeah, but like, do you think that we come at these conversations sometimes where it's like, what are you guys mad about? Like what? How much evidence of like cool, awesome Star Wars do you have?
No, none
Like-
anymore, except when we were children.
Yeah, and Andor. So it's like, what are we? I mean,
It's just,
can,
it's not
can we
that.
come at it and just be like, you know what? Like when you guys do something like Andor, let me know, and I'll you know.
But my thing that I just remain befuddled by. Here's two last things. I'll throw them out and then please respond. Here are my two things that I just don't get. One is there's a reason Spider-Man is more popular than Superman. Spider-Man is fallible, is human, is funny, and Superman. I mean, I'm going to say this again. I think James Gunn's going to make a good movie. I think there's a good Superman story to be told.
Your predictions about upcoming
budget
projects
movies,
are always
dead on.
100% right.
Well, he cast a guy from Philly, so I think it's going to be good. He cast Bryce Harper. Did you know that?
I didn't.
And yet, the stories in this universe that Dave Filoni seems committed to telling are about hammering out not just multiversal, different canonical texts, but making everyone a member of a boring, humorless order.
Right.
Like, let's put Rosario in this outfit and then have her not smile. Let's take, in the first episode, character Sabine Wren, who seems promising. My daughter's liked her hair.
At the end of the second episode?
No, the first episode. And she's listening to a brand new Illuminati Hotties song, rocking and rolling in her speeder because she's a rebel.
Is that the first time rock music has been in the Star Wars galaxy?
Well, I mean, Mos Eisley can swing.
But that's like more of a sort of Moroccan jazz. I'm saying, when did Paramore get to a galaxy far away?
I mean, I'm not mad at it. But you create that character who's as close to punk as this universe may allow. And then by the end of the second episode, she's chopping off her hair and becoming a fucking Mandalorian and a Jedi and someone's apprentice again. Because the one thing that heroes in Star Wars can't have is personality. It is so weird that is a choice. It doesn't have to be like that. And yet they keep coming back to that. The second thing that I do not understand, and I'm going to ask Kai to mute me, and you could just explain this to me like I'm a child.
Okay.
Like a child who once liked Star Wars movies. How long has Disney owned Star Wars?
I don't know.
At least 10 years.
Yeah,
12, maybe I think
I stopped
2010.
celebrating it after about 5 or 6. But yeah.
May the 4th be with you. How many new fans do you think they've created in a decade?
It's a great question.
And when did they give up on that?
Charles Holmes this last night, where I was like, say what you will about the quality of either thing. I actually think Marvel's probably trying to be like, we have to create a new generation of fans because it's not necessarily going to be drawn from comic book fans anymore.
Yep.
So we actually may have to
or Robert Downey Jr. fans.
Take some L's for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of the quality of the shows or whatever. They're like, you guys may not know who these people are, or you guys may not care about the Eternals or whatever, but we have to try some new stuff because it's not going to be cost effective if we have to pay $700 million to get the Avengers back together.
Also, those guys were old when we cast them.
Yes.
They're all in their 50s.
Yes.
Not all, but
so you're to your
Downey,
point,
Ruffalo,
I
these are
really
older
don't
guys.
know. I think that the sequels, for as erratic as they were and for as emblematic as they have become for the way that we just can't really kind of have thoughtful, critical conversations about anything anymore without it being you fucking think this or that about the entire world. I do think that the sequels and the Rey character minted some new fans.
Yeah.
And I think actually one thing that we should be conscientious of is that I know tons of people younger than I am who prefer the prequels to A New Hope. And people who actually think Rebels is the true Star Wars. And in some ways have been waiting as patiently and passionately as I have for someone like Tony Gilroy to play in the sandbox. They've been waiting for the stories of Rebels and these characters to come up on screen. I think that they are missing a beat where it's George Lucas knew what he did well and knew what he didn't do well. I mean, I think maybe he didn't, but he was eventually like, I don't need to be on set. I don't want to direct these things anymore. And Richard Marquand and Irving Kershner directed the last 2 movies.
He also brought in Larry Kasdan to write them with him.
Yes. And I think that there was like, whether it was like, he's like, I don't need to be on set because I can do everything in writing and storyboarding and then post, or whether it was because I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. And it has nothing to do with what Dave Filoni is good or not good at, but there needs to be, they needed like a little bit more Favreau in this or something, you know, or something where it's like, hey man, like this is a very long scene. This is a very long scene of this person talking to this cat, or, you know, even the kind of cool Indiana
my
Jones
children like
scene.
the cat, I should say.
Sure. But even the cool Indiana Jones scene of Ahsoka twisting all of the cylinders to get it's basically the throne room in Raiders. That's actually like a 6-minute scene. Like I honestly did like look down and then look back up and I'm like, she's still turning these things? Like this is all just to get to a map that I don't know about for something I don't know is what's at the other end.
To find characters we've never heard of.
This can go faster. This can have tempo. This can have like maybe some comedy. She's literally like turns those things and you're just like, okay, so on the third one, is it going to drop through the floor or whatever? And then the payoff is that she fights these Ray Harryhausen-ish robots when she gets up to the top of out of this room. But like this thing does need it. His tempo, Filoni's tempo, is just not my tempo, and I mean that in the most literal sense of like I need more going on in the frame, and I need more going on like pacing wise.
Yes, and also I think it's possibly worth saying that clearly this show isn't made for us, and we're not arguing that it ought to be, but it might be made for a very, very, very different era of cultural consumption, where to think of this as a television show is short-sighted, because this is so much more than that. It is a weekly television show. It is also I think much desired, expensive piece of cultural spackle to fill in the holes of things that have been, I guess, needing that spackle to be filled. It's also more raw content to be filed along your Wikipedia entries and your Timothy Zahn novels, and your your whole Star Wars experience.
The Thrawn novels, but do you know what Thrawn did?
I don't know what Thrawn is. He's Timothy Zahn. Yeah. I do know that because people talk about him a lot. As much as they talk about Thrawn, but because Timothy Zahn is a human being, I just feel like I get him a little bit more, you know? Is Thrawn blue?
Yeah.
That's cool. We need more blue people just across all genre storytelling. You know, maybe Thrawn will be good. Villains are often our way into some of these stories, but
you're pawing at a piece of citrus. Do you need some vitamin C? Do you need some refreshment?
No, I brought an orange to eat after the podcast, and then I'm getting agitated, so I'm just calming myself with fruit.
Here's some things I have some just random questions for you. I asked you about alt-rock and its emergence in the Star Wars universe.
I like that.
I thought Ray Stevenson was good. Rest in peace. That he was cool. Balin.
Oh, that was Ray Stevenson.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah.
What's up with getting impaled with a lightsaber and then being okay?
I just mentioned that. Yeah, I didn't know that was... Part of me is like, okay, well, it cauterizes itself.
Does it?
So you're not bleeding out. Well, it's hot, I think. I also think, though, if you're... if I was a... Does she get killed by... Is it a robot with a lightsaber? No, it's... What's her name?
She's beefing with, like, the third dude who's rolling with Ray Stevenson.
Haley.
What?
Haley from Paramore. Right? I'm just, like, broadly speaking.
Sabine is fighting a guy dressed in black, who I think is a guy, right? Or I think it's just like that's the one that
Ahsoka fights later, who has the Darth Maulish double blade.
Yes, which is pretty chill.
Yeah, and
a robot.
Okay, right. And it's the young woman, the young blonde woman,
is actually writing the next season.
Yes, that robot actually had its copyright upheld in the AMPTP proposal.
It's writing the next season of the morning show.
It is, again, I'm not
interior.
You actually, despite what I said last week.
John Hamm walks into the room.
Popular,
and he
handsome
sees Jennifer
actor.
Aniston.
What does he do next?
He says, I have something to tell you.
The news used to be about people, not corporations.
I think Vivek has interesting things to say.
That guy seems pretty chill.
Yeah.
You watch more, despite what I said last week or on Monday, you watch more episodes of House MD than I did. So you have a better sense of like what's inside our body carriages. And like, what are the odds? If you were poking someone with a light sword, how many times out of 10 would you miss anything important?
Well, it's not, do they mention to her like, oh, he missed all the vital organs?
No, they just help her.
Right.
They just are like, oh, good.
To be fair, it seems like when you go in the Bacta, is that what that is?
Oh, listen. Oh, and I'm an asshole for knowing the name of Timothy Zahn.
I'm actually pretty into surgical medical like pods
because you
one of
heard LeBron
one of the
had
all-time
one?
craziest things I've ever seen is that scene in Prometheus when she has that surgery.
She does.
What was I saying?
You're saying like the thing we didn't know about lightsabers is that you could just get run through with one and then be fine.
I always thought that was a fatality. Personally. Yeah. And I liked living in a world where that happened.
Yep.
You know?
It was at least you could count on it.
Right.
That was surprising to me.
Well, you remember the all-time nervous breakdown I ever had on this podcast was when they fake killed Chewbacca.
Yes.
Remember? And I was just like, he should be dead. Why are we doing this? See, this is the thing that I'm trying to... We're idiots. We've been screaming at each other about this since before COVID.
Since longer than that. I mean...
No, but before that, I think we were like, it's pretty cool. They were like, Star Wars.
You were like, Solo's not so bad.
Yeah.
that was your take, I believe.
It looks fucking pretty good now.
It really does.
Okay, so your daughters didn't like it. Is this the kind of thing where you're like, let me know when Thrawn shows up?
Do you want to know, like, if you just want to know one moment why I didn't like it? It was when Clancy Brown is giving his speech in front of the cartoon mural of the characters to remind everyone
mural,
that this was a cartoon. And he goes, because it was on this day several years ago. It's like, fucking pick a year.
Yeah.
You coward, pick a year.
Yeah.
You just have, what?
I don't know why he was vague about it.
On my next birthday, I'm going to try that. I'll be like, thank you, friends, for gathering.
I turned
on
40
this day.
several years ago.
Several years ago, I was born.
Yeah.
Let's not get into the details. Pick one. It's the same thing where it's like after Andor, you can't have a moment in a show.
Yes, you can.
Wait, not that. Here's the moment you can't have. You can't have a moment in a show where a character you're supposed to trust and like and have faith in their intelligence, like, what's the green lady's name?
Hera. You
can't have her be like, you still have people loyal to the Empire here? Why would they be loyal to the Empire? You can't do that. Andor, the entire show is about loyalties and the working class.
But Rosario says at the end of the episode, she's like, it's about greed.
Okay. So you feel like the class struggle was accurately represented in the end of Ahsoka too?
I mean, I feel in all likelihood that they were just pointing at like a screen, you know, where they were just like, I thought that actually,
that's the bigger thing.
That was actually a pretty, I thought it was like that was another one where it's the same way I was like Thrawn and Bridger stranded on the other side of the galaxy and two forces racing to find them is an interesting idea. I actually thought like within the kind of scope of the show, there being a kind of shadow military industrial complex growing out of the New Republic being like, yeah, we're going to throw like these hyperdrives in this Star Destroyer, but you don't need to know about like why we're doing that. And them getting like randomly inspected by Ahsoka and Hera and be like, why are you guys building this shit?
Yeah.
There's parts of this where I was like, I would watch this, but I just need somebody to punch up the dialogue.
I agree. The moment at the end of 2 when Sabine's in her not really that sick bed, where she's totally fine.
Yeah.
Let's just reiterate that. And she's talking to hologram Hera.
Yeah.
And there is the tenor of that conversation is one we've never seen before because we have seen master apprentice relationships in Star Wars for as long as there's been Star Wars, but we've not seen a master apprentice relationship between two women. And that it didn't feel significant in a like clickbaity you go girl moment. I was like, that's an interesting relationship. That's a different dynamic. And I'm glad that the show is aware of that and pursuing it. But to your point, it's just flat. It's just flat. She's like, you did good. You know, and she's like, you're the one that needs to hear that. Okay. Can I get some regenerative AI doing a pass on that? Because I think it could be punched
John
up a little
Hamm
bit.
walks in and says,
how much more would you like the show if John Hamm walked in that moment?
All right, so
did we fix anything?
Is it a keeper?
You want me to see Thrawn? I think that
I'm not going to make you watch this. I think I'll check out. There was a really spirited debate on the Midnight Boys about when they need to bring the two homies in, Thrawn and Bridger.
Oh, I thought you meant Charles and Van.
No, because they're
to
like,
just fix this.
They're like, is this going to take the entire season for them to find these guys? Because, theoretically, if they are stranded on the other side of the galaxy and you need this very special map with a key and a witch to find them, you wouldn't be like, we got there. That was quick.
Right.
On the other hand, do you really want to watch however many episodes of like diversions and like we thought we found them but we didn't, and now we're on a different planet but there's a case to be solved? I know that I would like personally for them to be like, we got out there, and I'll worry about the suspension of disbelief while I'm watching a Star Wars show on my own end.
I really like watching Rosario do lightsaber fights. That is a good reason to watch a show for me.
Okay.
But broadly, you guys have heard us. We do this every 4 to 6 months. I think I'm out. I mean, this isn't for me. I'm happy it's for someone. Andor season 2 will come out eventually, I hope. That's kind of Andor season 2 is a league of our own. RIP to that show. I hope it doesn't have a similar fate. So,
all right, let's take a quick break and then we're going to come back and talk Reservation Dogs.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, now streaming only on Netflix.
Love the way you look this wedding season at Men's Warehouse. With a range of sizes from extra small to big and tall. Explore top styles at prices for any budget, including designer suit and tux rentals starting at just $159. With over 600 locations, in-store consultations, and easy online booking, there's a reason why couples choose Men's Warehouse to find their perfect fit. Men's Warehouse. Love the way you look.
Okay, Andy, we're back. I wanted to talk to you about these last couple of Reservation Dogs.
I thought you wanted to talk about Samantha's return on And Just Like That.
I haven't seen it yet. Don't spoil it.
Oh, sorry.
You've not watched And Just Like That at all?
No. Is
I just think SJP is dealing.
Is Samantha kind of your Thrawn?
No, I always liked Miranda. She was my favorite non-Carrie of the bunch.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Who's the other one?
Charlotte.
I like her.
Did you never watch the show?
Barely.
Sex and the City?
Not really.
Not really?
Mm-mm.
Anyway, Reservation Dogs.
Let's do it.
I see the vision. I think I see the vision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
we're talking through episode 5?
We're talking through episode 5, which was called Housemate of Bongs.
Great name.
That's why I see the vision, is this guy just knows how to name things. Sterling Harjo and this third season, I think if you're just going episode by episode, what it is missing is the quest, right? Like it's missing the are they going to get out of Oklahoma? What's going to happen when they get to California? We've come back now. There are some ramifications. But in the 4th episode, for the most part, in Friday, I think that which is a very lovely slice of life.
Mm-hmm.
These guys sort of working off detention for running away at the IHS building. There are some little seeds of stuff, Laura's father, and is there a
Willie
budding,
Jack becoming a medicine woman?
Yeah, and is there a budding romance there with Bear? But there's still no will this or won't this happen? Do you know what I mean? Which I think and not unlike our conversation with Star Wars, you could have this sort of does every show need this reason for being?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Reservation Dogs has reason for being. But now after Housemate of Bongs, and if you watch Housemate of Bongs in conjunction with obviously the 2nd episode, because it's about the origins of the Maximus character
mm-hmm.
that Bear meets out there, and also in conjunction with the Dear Lady episode, it's a strange season of TV. It's an unorthodox season of television. And I think it goes towards what I was saying a few weeks ago about it being more like a book of short stories that interconnect rather than a novel or a sequel to a novel about these group of kids trying to do a specific thing. But holy shit, like he's trying to tell like an alternative social history of this group of people in Oklahoma. It is actually like pretty daring.
I agree. I think that I like that you said you see the vision, because I think that this has always been clear in the subtext, but it's being brought to the fore in this final season, that the show is not about these 4 kids leaving this place. It's about these 4 kids realizing where they are from.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, the operating statement for the series was voiced by super, super, super high teenagers in the 70s in the backseat of a car in last night's episode. The idea when Bucky's like, the link is broken.
Yeah.
We've seen this before in the between generation. Rita's generation. There's been attention paid to them over the past 3 seasons as well. And there was also some echoes there that I almost got confused about in time. Not confused in the way I was like, is this before the prequel series or after?
Right.
More like there is Laura's mother dies in a car crash that we don't see, but then when everyone was piling into a car, still tripping on window pane acid, I was like, wait, there's a car crash. Oh no, it's a different generation, but there are cycles that repeat themselves. So that idea of just that fundamental human idea of everyone is fucked up, they just get older and maybe learn a little bit of get a little bit of perspective and can share it, is a really powerful one. It makes for great art and great storytelling. And I really liked the turn the season took into that. That said, the best episode of the season to my mind through 5 is still 4, which is the most traditional,
because it's a Reservation Dogs
episode with this cast in this moment. I still like that more than the other episodes. I thought that there were real highs in the first 3, but I guess fundamentally less interested in Bear's spirit quest out on his own.
You want to see them together. You want to see them interacting together.
I think that they are a remarkable ensemble, both for the performances, but also the different notes that those characters can play when they're played together. And then there's also does seem to be a little bit of not uninteresting, but slightly less compelling to my taste, notebook clearing, which is to say, like, the Dear Lady origin story was a really remarkable attempt to talk about a part of American history and certainly Native history that you and I probably aren't that familiar with, do not spend a lot of time thinking about because we've never been forced to and never sought it out. That was remarkable to see on the screen in the service of a multi-pronged larger story. That said, it just, again, like the ratio of the season of digressions versus main aggressions has been a little bit off to me. And it was in Bongs too, in that it was really cool. It was Dazed and Confused. Some of these characters I feel connected to and interested in, like Brownie. Others I was like, oh, that's Bucky. It took me to the end to realize who that was.
Yeah.
And does that matter? Did it take away from my enjoyment? No. Unlike Ahsoka, someone could watch episode 5 of season 3 of Reservation Dogs and be like, cool.
Yeah.
I get it. That alone is interesting, but watched the way we're watching this season, the way you and I are watching it, certainly week to week to week, I've struggled to pull it all together with the ease that I did the first 2 seasons.
I'm completely fascinated to see what he does at the back half of the season. I mean, I'm with you. I thought that I thought Housemaid of Bongs was charming.
It was also about Maximus, a character we met 2 episodes
but
ago.
It was also like quite moving to imagine like this guy essentially his life of probably, it's alluded to in the second episode at least, that he's been institutionalized, that he's had a shock therapy, that he is essentially, like, I don't know if that's rooted entirely in a bad acid trip. And it's also like asking you to sort of believe the unbelievable and be like, what if this guy did have this experience and it is real to him? And this is part, I love that he's like sort of taking caricature and making them characters. And I love that he's taking mythology and making it history, you know? And like, where does this stuff come from? These stories we tell ourselves, and what does it mean to subsequent generations of people as it goes on and on, you know?
Yeah, and I gotta say, I wish that it was still up. But when I was in New York recently, I went to the Whitney and I saw this exhibit by an artist.
Holy shit, I saw that too.
Wait, you saw it?
Yeah.
And I don't know how to say her name correctly. I don't know if it's John Quick to See Smith or Johnny Quick to See Smith, but let's say it's Jaune is her first name. Quick to See is her middle name, and Smith is her last name. I didn't know you saw it.
It's fucking incredible, man.
It's this remarkable. It was an overview.
I think it just ended.
It just ended last weekend.
Yeah.
But her art was totally wild, totally incredible. It was called Memory Map,
and it's got like the kind of Rauschenberg like collage-y aspect to it.
And to see it
was just a casual Rauschenberg name drop. Don't worry about it.
I was going to applaud you. I was going to give you your flowers.
Thanks.
Your art flowers. To see it helped. It also just helped me in my appreciation and respect for Reservation Dogs, because there is of course, this is not to be proud of my own ignorance up to this point, but there is just such a rich vein and tradition of Native art that is so funny and so self-aware and so engaging with mainstream popular culture and commenting on it, but yet also connected to, this is not true to the painting, but I just mean largely metaphorically, deer ladies.
Yeah.
Or star people. And it's all to be said in the same breath. And to see this art, which went back decades, and then watch the show and see what Sterling is doing, almost like he's not alone. He has a rich community of talented people that he's now raising up with him. But it's not a burden either. But this show, to educate me and to bring me more into that tradition, and he's doing it across...
It's still entertaining.
But he's doing it across genres and styles.
Yeah.
I didn't know you saw that.
Look at us.
Look at us seeing art. But it was really cool to connect a show that we like, or that even we can quibble with week to week, and connect it to a much larger and richer tradition.
It's the best thing about art, is when you can start to see it in different places. You know what I mean? Like it's when you're like, oh, I'm really into this novel or this television show or this film, and then what you take from that film you can find it in a gallery at a museum, or you can find it in a piece of literature or whatever. It's just like those cross connections are what I live for, essentially. Because God knows I don't have the Wagner Group to believe in anymore.
I live for the New Republic, and I hope that it can, the magazine, not the Star Wars thing. But there's a moment in the Deer Lady episode, which I hadn't seen when I saw the exhibit the other week at the Whitney, but where basically the little boy is like, when the little boy and the Deer Lady in the past are like, we can smile because that's what we can do. It's devastating in the context of that episode, but it is also that is what animates, I think, Sterling's art and his work. And that's also what animated Johnny Quick to See Smith. These pieces about how the essential aspects of Native life, one of them is humor, always humor. And like, that's something that is that is just so culturally powerful and moving, and also not what decades or centuries of white representation of Native life or art has ever given us. Yeah, it's interesting. It's also just interesting to go from talking about Star Wars, which often inspires us to go very large in our
proclamations
and criticisms, to switching gears entirely to a show that I revere and taking issue with some of it in the micro, but still loving it in the macro.
Good conversation.
Always a rich and good conversation.
I was listening to NPR on the way in, and
first Rauschenberg, now NPR.
There's a thing NPR hosts do when they're kind of like cycling through the guests, where some guy was calling in and he was telling the host about like what the conditions are in the Fulton County Jail that Trump can expect when he gets processed today. And the host just ends it by like, interesting, thanks a lot. And then the interview's over.
Do you want to try that?
I was thinking about bringing that vibe, like cutting you off like mid-Ahsoka and be like, really interesting stuff, Andy. Thanks so much. Now coming up next, Charles and Van.
I think Bill and everyone at like Spotify writ large would prefer it if we made this more like NPR. Isn't that? Don't you think? Like that's the better vibe for us.
So in what way? Like
we should slow it down.
Fundraising.
That's a great idea.
Thanks to Kai for producing us. We'll be back on Monday. Hope everybody has a great weekend.